folks whose lives had been impacted by the Bruce Springsteen album, The Rising, in the wake of September 11th. What would a show that told those stories be like?
It's Jimmy.
Hi, I'm Jim Alexander with Real Talker. Hey, RJ, how's it going?
Good, Jim. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm helping out a friend open up a medical spa. So there might be some noises that sound like Godzilla, but I'm all good.
Did you say a medical spa?
Yeah, well, they're going to do COVID testing. So starting on Monday here.
Awesome.
So
good going.
Helping out to start it up and open it up. So, but awesome. Also talking to you. So that's the fun part right now. Got to start out. You know what, Archie? Where'd you come up with an idea? It's such a unique concept for this show. I was really blown away. I kept on. I had to watch one episode after the next one. I was binging it in a sense. But where was the initial kind of introduction to the idea or this concept? Because there's a lot of things that need to align to get these people together and these stories together. But what was the initial concept of it?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jim. And you know, it takes a village. It was actually my friends over at Apple TV Plus when they were just getting up and running, invited me over for a meeting, and we were talking about different things we might do together. And they said, you know, we just were at this conference and we showed a film, a short kind of promotional piece called Dear Apple. That was 3 minutes long, and it was about the Apple Watch, and they showed it to me, and it was beautifully done. But it was, you know, it was a product spot, really, but it told these beautiful stories people had related in letters they had written to Apple about how the watch had impacted their life. You know, the watch got me to exercise, saved me from diabetes. The watch, when I cried out to the watch and I was in the car accident lying in the ditch, the watch got 911 to come and rescue me. Stories like that, you know, great stories. It was beautifully filmed. It didn't necessarily suggest a television series, but, you know, I guess that's why they called me. And they said, is there something that, you know, that might come from this? So I went off and I chewed on it for a few days. And the question I asked was, what would a show that told the story of the folks whose lives had been impacted by the Bruce Springsteen album, The Rising, in the wake of September 11th? What would a show that told those stories be like? Would that be interesting? Would it be a way of learning about Bruce? Would it be would it be emotional? Would it be dramatic? Would it be a way of learning about people we didn't know, but whose stories we could really relate to? Would there be an interesting theme? Maybe something like our work matters, and one person can change the world through their work and their actions. And is there a way to kind of apply what I see in this product spot to that idea? And then if you could do it with Bruce, could you do it with Oprah? Could you do it with Big Bird? Could you do it with Spike Lee? And from there came the idea for the series.
How do you pitch these? Because we're talking about larger than life figures, icons, in a sense, from generations. I mean, what I loved about this too, it's part of another second part of this question, is these characters stem from different generations. I mean, you got Big Bird from the late 60s, and you have someone like Yara, who's a very contemporary youth right now that's making a difference. So you had many generations of different folks that made a difference. But what was the pitch like to get these icons, in a sense, like Oprah, Stevie Wonder, Spike Lee? What was the sort of discussions you would have for them to be part of this project to get them all on board? Because I imagine that wouldn't be the easiest sell, you know, to get them on board.
Well, we said things very similar to what I have just said to you. We wanted to tell the story about their stories, but we wanted to tell their stories through the eyes of people whose lives had been changed by their work. and you'd be surprised at how positive a response we got to that. And we did. It was very important to us to put together a diverse group of people, not only in terms of age, but of race and socioeconomic background and career pursuits and body of work and geography. And we traveled the world over to make this series. And so that was very important to us. But we really just said, we want to tell your story, and you'd be surprised at how positive a response we got to that. And we did. It was very important to us to put together a diverse group of people, not only in terms of age, but of race and socioeconomic background and career pursuits and body of work and geography. And we traveled the world over to make this series. And so that was very important to us. But we really just said, we want to tell your story, but we want to tell it through the eyes of those whose lives have been changed by the things you've put out into the world.
The interesting thing here was, were they aware of these letters, or were these things they had personally held on to or had, or did they even know the people behind them? What was that like? It felt like the way it was shot, that it was like almost moment of revelation. They're reading this for the first time. They're kind of taking it in certain cases, and they're getting very emotional about it. Tell me kind of the approach of that. Was this sort of something that they knew about, or was this a firsthand kind of experience?
Well, almost to a person. I think to a person, everyone requested that we not share the letters with them until the moment they were reading them on camera. So what you see is very much a genuine response and a first time that they've seen the letters. On the other hand, they're folks like the people who are featured in this series have offices. They have someone in their office has collected their letters. That became a very valuable resource to us. Of course, we also researched online to find people who had expressed gratitude for specific impacts that our subjects had on their lives, and we went at it in many different directions. But in terms of the individual subjects, the Oprah and Stevie and Lynn and Spike and Yara, et cetera, when you see them reading those letters, they're reading them for the first time, and you're seeing their genuine reactions. And it's very powerful stuff.
No question it was. Is there any moment, I mean, you're seeing all these iconic figures in a sense, showing a different side of them that we really don't see in a lot of ways, and how their work and their life has impacted others. Was there anything personally, whether individual story-wise, through one of the individuals, that really struck you in a sense where you learned something, or it was kind of maybe a light bulb moment for you in a sense?
I think we tend to imagine that that success breeds what's the word? I think we tend to imagine that success kind of isolates us from being connected to the people who receive our work. And that the more successful you are, the less you really care about how your work is affecting the world. And what you see again and again and again in this show, and what I saw again and again and again in making this show, is that that's simply not true. That it doesn't matter how successful you are. It doesn't matter how lauded your work is. It doesn't matter how much fame and fortune you've accrued. If you ever cared about the impact that your work has on the world, and I believe that everybody in our series cares about that. If you've ever cared about it, your success doesn't have any impact on on how much you care. And I dare say there's no royalty check. There's no increase in Instagram followers. There's no nothing that compares to the impact that you see these individual letters having on the subjects of our show.
You know, it made me kind of wonder too. You've done so much work and like a variety of work. You've produced things and written and films and documentaries. Has this show in a sense made you think about the legacy you want to leave behind with all the work you've done and the future work that you might be able to do? Because I would think this sort of thing would be an eye-opening experience internally too. You see the impact some of these people do, but you as a creator yourself, you make an impact on people who watch your stuff. Have you thought about your personal legacy now, in a sense, especially after this, what you would want to kind of do going forward, or what you have done?
It's such an interesting question, and I think what this show, the gift that this show has given me, is the lesson, the same gift that Maya Angelou gave to Oprah, and the same gift that Lynn gives to our audience. Maya Angelou said, "Your legacy is every life you've touched," and Lynn says, when you put work out into the world, you're dropping a pebble into the water, and the ripples affect everybody and everything, and they just ripple on, and you never know what the impact is going to be. And that's those two kind of guiding lights are a great source of comfort to, because on some level, the hardest thing to imagine is that your work is going to impact a life, even change a life. And it's so you don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. But when you run into somebody at for me at a festival screening or something like that, and they share with you how important to them a film you may have made, or a project you were involved with, a TV series, something like that, how impactful it was to them. Believe me, it stays with you, and it's a beautiful thing.
I'm kind of a firm believer in bringing your own kind of life experience. Like, you need to live a full life and enjoy every moment of being a real person to bring into your creative work as an artist. And I mean, for example, one of your films that you've done is one of my favorites, If I Stay. And that's a movie that made me a lot think about what kind of impact you leave around people if you were to be gone, in a lot of ways too, and how the world goes on. What sort of things are you drawn to in your personal life, whether hobbies or interests that you might say motivate your work or kind of give you ideas that you want to bring to the screen? Because I feel like a lot of your different projects feel personal in a lot of ways, or they're very thought-provoking in a human aspect to it. So I kind of was wondering if there's anything in your personal life, whether hobbies or interests, that kind of breed into your work.
Well, sure. Everything in your personal life impacts your work, and my job is a super fun job as a filmmaker and storyteller and television producer and film producer. I get to indulge in all sorts of interests, and I get to follow my curiosity, and so one of the things I guess you could tell about me from my work is that I'm a generalist. I have a lot of interests, a lot of passions. I'm interested in sports, and I'm interested in music, and I'm interested in politics, and I'm interested in teenage life, and I'm curious about all of those things, and I'm curious about the theater and art, and so my work has kind of I'm fascinated by fascinating people. I'm very drawn to stories about people at a crossroads in their lives, and how decisions are made, and interpersonal dynamics. There's so many things, and you'd find in my private life that I have similar interests. I have kids now, so I'm seeing the world a lot through their eyes, and that's had an impact on the work that I do and the stories I like to tell. Around the time that I was writing and making If I Stay, my father had passed away, and and the you learn a lot at a time like that in your life. We all go through it, and it was a very meaningful, powerful time in my life, and that was a piece that in large part reflected on what that time in my life was. So I think all of our work tends to be reflections, but they're also, it's especially with the documentaries, it's so fascinating. I'm making a film now about Billie Eilish. Billie's I met her when she was 16 when we met, and we started filming soon after she turned 17, filmed for a year together. And I always say these films are kind of a combination of what you witness when you make them and what you experience when you make them. So it's a combination of your own personal experience and also what you see the person you're making the film about go through. And so it's a rich kind of mixture of those two things. And as a result, it's very much about the subject. In the case of the Billie Eilish film, it's going to be, of course, very much about her and that very extraordinary year in her life. But it's also what I experienced as I was watching her go through it and going through it with her. And so that's kind of how you do it. And it's, as I say, a great privilege.
Thank you so much, RJ. I mean, I've been a big fan of your work and looking forward to the Jim Belushi doc and the Billie Eilish. I just keep on hoping you keep on being creative as you've been and bringing like powerful human stories, because you certainly have a touch to humanity, and I really appreciate that in your work.
Thank you very much. It's really appreciate you saying it.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Have a great one.
See you again.
Bye-bye.